Team, welcome to yet again another episode of Becoming a Bowhunter. I'm super pumped. We have hit over 20,000 plays within the short few months that we've been going for, which is absolutely incredible. So first of all, thank you very much to you guys. Secondly, to help out the show a little bit more, if you wanted to, what you could do is, of course, share it with your friends. If you get something out of this, if you find it of value, then please do me a solid and share it out with your mates, any other hunting buddies, even if they're a rifle hunter, because so far we have converted a heap of rifle hunters to bow hunting. So get all your friends onto the bow hunting bandwagon. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a hell of a lot so far, as I know you guys have too, because you've been telling me through Instagram, which is awesome. So keep those comments coming. If you'd love to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that does really, really help the show out. So that would be much appreciated. Also, here we are, part 2 of the goat hunt. I hope you guys get amongst it. I hope you love it. This was a lot of lessons learnt. I'm just going to let you listen to the episode. Enjoy, team.
Hey there, and welcome to Becoming a Bowhunter. I'm your host, Matty, and join me and our guests as we take the quality of meat back into our own hands, searching the wild for free-ranged animals to harvest as ethically as we can. I interview a variety of specialists from the bow hunting community to help fast-track your journey as a bow hunter. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this chinwag on one of your favorite topics in the world, bow hunting. All right, bow hunters, here we are, back for part 2 of the hunt. It's a week and a bit since it's happened.
Yeah, a week and a little bit.
Man, it's definitely been a blur for me, and I can almost guarantee it's been a blur for you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we've both had very full-on things happening since we've been back, just busy and life as it happens to be. So, I mean, we just actually had a quick chat before we even started recording about, do you remember what it was that kicked off day 3? And we kind of had to rack our brains a little bit to think about that, but I'm glad that we could kind of do it a little bit of justice. And so I think setting the mood based after Saturday. Sorry, yeah, it was after Saturday. So we had Friday as day 1, Saturday as day 2. So Saturday we were kind of eager to chew at the chomp, right? Like get off the bit because of...
Yeah, that's it. Day 2 we hadn't had much luck at all. The wind was screwing us up the whole time. So day 3 we wanted to make the most of the morning that we had.
And we were kind of talking about it, I think, on that Saturday night of like, when we get the opportunities tomorrow, we have to work harder for them. We got to take those shots that we weren't willing to take that day almost. So it's like, okay, if we're at 35 meters, let's take that 35-meter shot.
That's always how it is, man. Yeah, you pass something up on day 2 or day 1, and then day 3 it starts looking real good.
I don't know about you, but I'd kind of put it in my head because I think we were talking about the cost of a goat, of what the farmers can get for goats. And so in my head, I was like, oh, well, because we're paying for the property, all I need to do is get 2 goats to pay back the money. Like, that's all I need to have. And then I've earned my money back. Like, that's a very fair trade, and I'll be super happy with that.
As long as you don't factor in the cost of your bow and your arrows and your stuff.
Yeah, exactly right. I actually had James messaged me this week, and he's like, oh, that's great. Stace will finally be happy that you've got a bow and that you've got into it because you're bringing home the meat. Like, yeah. Not to mention all the money that's been spent on bows and arrows, like you said.
Yeah, just don't ask, don't tell, I think.
Yeah, exactly right. Oh, dude, that's crazy. So, man, I don't know about you, but I was actually very surprised. Like, I'm a pretty fit individual, and you do a lot of training yourself.
Yeah.
But we were both pretty cooked after the hunts. Like, it's obviously long days.
Yeah, a lot of hills, hey. Just a lot of up and down.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely felt like I had the energy to keep moving while we were there, but it was definitely the aftermath. And I think it's because you factor in the long-ass days, the big amount of driving that happens as well. It's almost like by the end of it, you're just absolutely pooped.
Yeah, man. I think the big thing was not taking time for lunch and actually stopping to eat all the time, just having to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know about you, but I definitely fast a lot. Like, I'll fast for a lot of the day, and so I don't generally eat my breakfast until about lunchtime most days anyway. I'll just kind of live off of a black coffee or something. And I think that works pretty well for me. But in that regard, like, I'm not moving as much as I do when we're out hunting. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
day one, dude, we hammered until like, I think it was 4 o'clock or something before we ate our first meal.
Yeah, pretty much. I think we got up at what, like 6 in the morning, and then just went for it.
I think we were up at 4:30 or something, so to drive in.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
hefty. Well, let's break into it. I think. Well, day three. I think.
three.
Do you remember how you kind of feeling when you woke up in the morning?
Oh, I'm sure cold.
That was the coldest day by far.
Well, yeah, -1, they said.
Yeah. That was actually
Yeah.
the first day when we got out and there was like ice on the car. There was frost on the ground. Like it was legit cold.
It was, yeah.
All the other days were just pussy cold compared to -1.
No, it was good. I don't know. I was ready to get stuck into it. You know, we had a few hours left to try and make something happen. So, yeah.
I think I almost felt that pressure. Like coming into day three, you're like, okay, we kind of talked about, okay, what's the latest that we want to get away by? And we kind of planned out our morning. And I think I was definitely almost feeling like you're feeling tired just because of the weekend in general. But then you're excited because you're going out hunting, which is awesome. You're super pumped for that. But then I think definitely because of the pressure I'd put on myself, I think based around like, okay, I've got to get 2 goats. That was definitely there in the morning. I was like, oh, all right, well, we've got to get after it today. Like we really have to push for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always like that, last day jitters. I mean, we kept talking about because we both watch Stephen Eller's Meat Eater, and he always has that moment, right? Like he has to struggle for the first few days, and it's always like last flight, last day, he gets his golden opportunity, and a part of you always thinks that you're going to get that, so you keep pushing, but yeah.
I think we were blessed with the first day, but also cursed by it as well because we had so much opportunity. We're like, oh, day 2, day 3 is going to be a breeze. Like we're going to walk away with like 3-4 goats from this tour.
It was an impossible standard, I think. That was wild. But
Didn't set us up for success, that's for sure.
nah.
So we'd planned to kind of go into the back paddocks, and we knew that the wind was going to be blowing in a favourable manner until 11, I think it was, before the winds were meant to shift.
Yep.
So it was going to be maybe a northeasterly, I think was the direction it was going. And so we're like, okay, that's sick, that's perfect. We're going to go back into the paddocks and we'll hang out up there. So I actually remember a step beforehand that we didn't talk about before. So we actually drove up into the back paddocks, and there's kind of like it's big open plains, and there's this section where we were turning off to go down into where we'd seen the fallow deer that I stalked on, where I found also the antler. P.S. My dog actually chewed the tip off of one of the antlers. I was so devo. But
I guess it's hers now, hey?
No, it's still a good little monument. It's sitting on the table. It's just missing a little chunk. But it's confusing because we've given her antler before to chew on. So she's had her own antler. So she's like, oh, that's mine. Anyway, so it's like these big open fields, and we drove pretty much as far as we could on the boundary, and we saw some deer hanging out just underneath the tree. And so we drove as far to the boundary as we could, which was probably like 250 meters away from where the deer were. And here we were, 2 white boys thinking we were going to trick these deer. We hopped out and trying to be nice and sneaky and walked through probably like 20, 30 meters of cornflakes to get to the other side. It was pretty thick bush. So we got to the other side of the cornflakes and they're just looking straight at us.
They knew what was up, straight away.
Yeah.
I think that was never going to happen.
Yeah, so we pretty much turned around pretty quickly, and lucky because that was right in the open. It was freezing. That wind was just gusting straight across.
Yeah.
I just remember my nipples hurting so much just from that freaking wind.
God.
And so we were like, okay, let's jump back in the car. I think mainly we're both kind of keen to be in the car because it was so warm compared to outside, but also obviously you can cover a bit of ground when we're trying to cover over, like, it was probably a 2K that we drove before we jumped out again.
Yeah, it was a big property, much bigger than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
You could see a fair bit as well, so.
Yeah, definitely. And so we kind of drove for a little bit, just jumping. It was like we were slowly going over hills. And we got to a point, and I'm like, is that a cow? That's a weird-looking cow. And I think we were still driving.
Yeah, small cow or a big goat. I'm not sure which.
And you're like, no, dude, that's definitely a goat, like as you're glassing it as we were driving. And so we stopped, and of course they can just see the car coming, so they just all busted off. They ran away, jumped under a fence line, and then took off into like this thick, it looked like a thick sort of scrub paddock patch essentially. And we're like, oh, well, we've ruined that one. We may as well keep driving. And so we drove down and we literally got into the next paddock, and then these two fallow deer hopped up and ran, and we're like, we're idiots. We should have been walking this whole time. So I think that was kind of like the first, we've fucked up already in a state, like our final chance, and we fucked up.
Yeah, we've already blown out 3 sort of stalks, and we'd only been driving for like 15 minutes sort of thing.
If even, yeah. And so we decided to pull back up where we saw the goats and then try check after them, because from what we'd seen, right, they hadn't been moving too far anytime we scared them.
Yeah, we could still hear them a little bit, I think, as well.
Yeah, and like it was kind of the other side of the gorge, which was now like the gorge meaning where the river was, where we'd got the goats previously, and where we'd seen a lot of goats. So we kind of thought their movement pattern would be down into that gorge then. At least that was my assumption.
That they would sort of head back towards the river, I think. But
yeah, and so we kind of trekked in after them. I don't know, we walked for what, I can't get my throat clear. We walked for what felt like, I don't know, it felt like a good 40 minutes before we turned back.
Yep. Yeah, it was probably about half an hour, 40 minutes, and sort of figured that we always knew the goats would be there later in the day, and thought we might as well get amongst the fallow while it was still morning. So
and so we were right in the shade at this point. We're like, let's get onto some fields that have some sun on them, because that would be the best place to be feeding right now. And so we just kind of backtracked out of that little jungle patch we were in and tried to walk across some open fields. And it pretty much, the way I looked at this property of where we were, it looked like it would be the sickest snowboard park. if there was snow there, like it was just like all of these big ass valleys and drop-ins and bits and pieces. I'm like, man, that'd be sick to snowboard. It sucked to walk, that's for sure. So we're kind of bearing in and coming out of like, there wasn't much grass there because it's pretty dry at this place, but these patches just didn't have much grass. There's a fair bit of tree cover and enough to kind of kill off the grass, I reckon.
Yeah.
And so we kind of walked over a few different valleys, a few different gullies, and we saw some dams and stuff, but there just really wasn't much life about, hey.
Yeah, sort of like you were saying, there was not a lot of grass, a lot of deadfall, a lot of things like that. So I think that's why we sort of figured that maybe deer wasn't the right plan right now, and we should, because we've been talking about giving your fox whistle a bit of a go.
Yeah.
Weekend, so I thought we might as well give it a crack, see what happens.
Yeah, and so where we were, there was a whole heap of like just trees knocked over. There was like piles of just trees that had been knocked over and just pushed over to the side by a bulldozer or something. So we were like, this looks like a good place. Like, let's give it a shot. We may as well. And so we kind of just backed ourselves up. And the first section, it was kind of like 2 piles of wood set up together. So I went to one pile and you were just, the other pile was just adjacent. Like it was attached but adjacent. So you kind of went off to that one. And so I was standing up, leaning up against a tree. And you were kneeling, or were you standing?
I was standing, yeah.
Just behind.
Yeah, some deadfall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I jumped on the whistle to start with, and based off of what Lonnie Brockman had said, I was like, cool, let's give it a shot. Like, give it a minute whirl on this, just kind of giving sharp, short, like, calls. And then after the minute, change over to your finger, doing the OK sign, like the symbol, and going for it, just sucking your finger for a bit. And I did that for about a minute. And literally, this cat just walked straight up. I was like,
yeah, it wasn't even a minute, man. It was pretty quick.
Yeah, I was like, dude, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. And so it came straight in. It didn't worry at all. It was straight up to 30 yards and sort of stuck behind a little bit of a stump. And we just couldn't get it in any further. That was the problem. I think it must have known something was up. It must have moved somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know how good their hearing is, but I wonder if, because we were probably 8 meters, 10 meters away from each other, so maybe just me being like, Lawrence, look right. Like, obviously I was whispering it, but I think I actually yelled out left first, which didn't help the situation. I left, no, right. Just the excitement of seeing a cat. I was just blown away that it would actually work. I don't know. I really wasn't expecting it. What was that?
Like, it was amazing. It just came in on a string. It just ran straight up. It was coming for us. And
yeah.
really cool to see.
It's either that they're super hungry or they're just active when they hear dead things, like, or things that are in struggle, right?
Just evil little murderous bastards.
Yeah, definitely. And so it kind of it hung at like 30, right? So it was behind that log for a fair while. And then it just crept. It was further away from you and closer towards me and pretty much put me between you, me between you and it. So
yeah, kind of, sort of did a circle around. So I think it cut up the hill to try and get our wind, I think.
Yeah.
And it sucked, man, because I had so many shots at it. It was a perfect sort of 30 yards, 31, walking right around in a circle. But remember, I had run out of arrows at this stage.
Yeah.
So I had yours, and all I had taken the time to do was put a 20 pin on. And so I thought, if it's not at 20, I won't shoot. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
and he had this perfect opportunity on this cat at 30 yards. And just couldn't do it. Just couldn't shoot. Couldn't move forward. Couldn't do nothing.
That's so funny. And we thought based on what the winds were doing that they were going to be the same as day one. So we didn't really have to worry. We're like, okay, day 3's similar winds to day one, which means we can get 20 meters on everything. This would be great.
Yeah.
Little did we know. And so it kind of snuck up and actually went fully around me and jumped into the wood patch, we think. But then we was just lost. We couldn't see it from there on out. And so we're like, well, this is great. Like, I didn't realize that we could call in some cats, but there's obviously one here. There's bound to be more. So we probably only moved, 50 meters?
Yeah, 50, 100. We had a little walk, but not too far.
It was pretty much like up the hill and to the left of where we were standing.
Mm-hmm.
And we started again. And this time, it probably took like 5 minutes or so.
We traded spaces after this one. I said, well, you can take the shot further than I can, so I'll whistle it. And I was sort of still getting used to the whistle because I'd never used one before.
That's right,
so
yeah.
I was making noises that probably weren't whistles, but...
So to explain the whistle, it's what did you call it? Tenterfield whistle? Tenterfield Fox whistle?
Tenterfield whistle, I think is what they're normally called.
So I've got the brand that's the Apex Fox Predator, I think. And it's literally like... Yeah, it's like the bent metal, like a V shape, literally like the video that I've put up of Lonnie Brockman on the YouTube channel, but it's one that I just bought. He'd made his own one. And it's really actually quite frustrating to use for the first time because you have to place your tongue, like you have to round your tongue up against the back of it, like where the apex of the point is. So you have to round your tongue against that and almost like curl your tongue back and then blow through it as if you're just trying to... There's nothing else to say to it apart from you just blowing out. And it takes a little bit to get used to, definitely. Like it seems very temperamental. Sometimes it works a treat, and other times it just doesn't at all.
And once you get it right, you just like don't move at all. It'll take you forever to get it again, but yeah.
But even then, it seems like even if you keep going, that eventually it's just going to stuff up. Like I don't know, but it's a great whistle, obviously, because it worked. It worked a treat. And so you started calling, and there was 5 minutes.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah. And I got impatient, and I was like, dude, I don't think, like, maybe we should move up the hill a little bit more. And as I stood up, there's a freaking cat right there, black cat that had come on the string over to your right-hand side. So this time you were behind me, and we set me up probably 5 meters in front of you, looking down the valley. We were both looking down the valley, thinking it was going to come from that way, and instead it kind of came from the right. Yeah,
it came from behind us. And we should mention that the first one was a tabby. So this is definitely a separate cat.
Yeah, completely different.
Yeah, so there's two of them.
I was kind of surprised. I was thinking that the wild cats would be quite big. These ones both look like house cats.
Yeah, they weren't massive compared to the one I've seen in the state forest, which was, the size of a bloody staffy.
Yeah.
These ones are,
full of muscle.
Cat size. Yeah. Yeah. Nowhere near as big as I thought, but it's still bloody cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably, like, even though we'll talk about what happened later, but that was probably my highlight of that day, to be honest. Sure. Like, knowing that we can actually do that. I was kind of in the state of thinking, I'm not going to be able to whistle in a fox until someone comes and shows me how to do it properly. But really, just listening to exactly what Lonnie had said, that helped a treat. Like, I was blown away with that podcast I did with Lonnie, and he gave a lot of tips around it. And it was perfect. Like, go and try that. And if there's things around, I think they're going to come in.
Yep, absolutely. I listened to that one too. I thought it was really good. But it was it's interesting. Hey, like I've tried to whistle foxes a few times and never had any luck. And this time it just seemed to work like magic. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's your whistle. Maybe it was just listening to that podcast. But it was good.
What whistle do you usually use? It's a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, I have like a button whistle, like one of the cheaper ones. So it's not the tenor filled; it's just straight through a button. So it looks a bit like looks a little bit like a UFO actually, with a flying saucer,
okay.
with a hole straight in the top and in the bottom, and you sort of put it up against your lips and blow, and it makes less of a raspy noise, more of a straight whistle. But yeah,
Because I think the thing I was most skeptical about with my Apex one is how loud it was. But you said that if you get a rabbit,
yeah.
that they'll just screech even louder.
Yeah, rabbit in distress is basically what you're trying to emulate, right? And they make that noise and they make it that loud, and yeah, I think it works pretty well.
I wonder if because of the country we're in and because there was so much rabbits around that would have maybe made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, well, I think that's the saying, isn't it? Like if there's rabbits, there's foxes, or I guess in this case, cats.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there would have been foxes there too.
Yeah, if we kept going, we would have found something. But.
Yeah, so we kind of tried a few more spots. We went up the hill, and I stupidly left my rangefinder there. So I think that kind of created a bit of commotion because we had to walk back down the hill, walk back up. And we sat there calling for a fair bit, and once again didn't work. And then the next spot, we were just kind of walking back to the car. We're like, it's getting pretty late. Let's go back to the goats in the river. And as we were walking back, we just found like this whole new valley that just looked perfect. So we're like, you want to give it a shot? So we did. We were just like, it looks perfect. Might as well. But that's when I was pretty much kind of positioned a little bit too much in the sun, I think. And I think that if anything was to look up, it probably would have just seen me glowing.
It'd be interesting to ask, hey, because I mean, we did like 4 stands, and we 2 brought up something. I would like to know like how many stands do people do on average before they actually get a fox or a cat or something? Like, is 2 out of 4 a pretty good return rate, or should we be doing 10? You know?
Yeah, because I think some people just won't even bother whistling until they see a fox. If they're just walking about and they'll see a fox, then they'll whistle it in. Whereas what Lonnie's talking about is look out for the actual locations that look like that could be some good hiding space. And that's essentially what we did. We're like, hey, this looks like it could be a place where a fox or a cat could hang out.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, that's, definitely. So, I mean, for the listeners, if you're a fox caller, give us a yell. Let me know if you're doing, for instance, four calls, is that a good return rate? I'd say it probably is to get two off of it.
Yeah.
I think outside of that is, maybe what your sort of percentage return rate is for when you're calling. And Lonnie kind of talked about going only 200 meters before you do another call. So that's why we were kind of like every 100 or so.
Yeah, we definitely weren't walking that far. I wonder if we maybe should have walked further. But yeah, I'm just interested to know. Like I feel like 2 out of 4 stands is really good, but I don't know. I'd be interested to find out.
I think for me, it was once again like that last day pressure was kind of getting to me by this stage. I was like, we know we're running out of time. Like, maybe we should go after the big game here. Like, as fun as it was, and even though it was probably looking back at it, that was a big highlight of that day. I was definitely like, let's go after some meat.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. You definitely had that in your head, hey? You had to get a second goat to make it worthwhile, so...
Yeah. What an arsehole. And so we kept heading back to the car because that next section didn't work. And we were walking along the fence line, and all the goats are hanging out just by the car. So where we'd parked was literally where we saw the cow-looking goat. And yeah, that's where they were hanging out still, and that was pretty much like all the big billies of the property were there. Hey.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if it was the same mob we'd seen the day earlier, or if it was a new one.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it was a size mob as well. There were a fair few of them. There was like more than 20 in there, you reckon?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And so when we were walking along the fence line, because they're sheep farmers, there was sheep just in the paddock we were in. Mm-hmm. And we scared the sheep down to woods where the goats were, but on the other side of the fence. So we didn't really think of it, to be honest. We just saw where the goats were, and we're like, okay, let's trek back a little bit. We'll jump the fence because the wind was bad, that if we'd kept going straight to them, we would have blown them out. So we're like, okay, let's just jump the fence and we'll do a big old loop around just so we can kind of get above them and see what we can see if we can get something on them.
Yeah, which worked pretty well. The problem, I think, was that they were out in the open and there was not a hell of a lot of cover as well. So as well as trying to get the wind right, which wasn't working for us, it was also trying to find a way to get into them because there's a lot of set of eyes, you know what I mean? There was a lot of goats there.
And I think this is where people kind of say goats are dumb because They literally, they spotted us from where we were glassing them. As soon as we started walking, it was just like the loudest stuff we'd walked on all weekend, I think.
Yeah.
And there was one nanny who'd spotted us out, and she started giving us a sneeze or a spit straight away. And then they just kept going back to eating. Like, we'd just pause and wait for a little bit, and then they'd go back to eating, and then we'd take a few more steps, and she'd kind of keep an eye on us, and we'd look up and then look down and look up and look down.
What would you say, about 150 yards or 150 meters?
Dude, I think it was further. Hey, I reckon it was closer on like 200, if not a bit more.
Yeah, so they had spotted us well and truly from a while away. So that was amazing that you could still gain that ground, you know, while they're aware of your presence.
Like, she was far enough away that I definitely had to glass her to see what she was doing and if she was looking.
Yeah.
Every time. And so we'd kind of said also that we should try film a little bit more. We should try get the camera out a little bit more. So I was like, all right, do you want to film me? And you're like, yeah, for sure, may as well. Let's give it a shot. Yeah. And we pretty much were stuck in the open, right? Like, we started walking towards them. I've got my bow, you've got the camera, and they're literally just looking at us, and we're stuck in the open. We're like, fuck, what do we do here? Like, we were pretty much aiming. There's a big patch of dead trees, like right there, right next to them. So my goal was to get to that so we could have a shot, because it looked like they were pretty much 20, 30 meters from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much a straight 150, 200 yard, just like slow walk and or crawl, just with like a couple of trees either side of them, you know, like in between us and them, which was a long process.
And so my goal was to army crawl the whole way. And there was like grass, but it had decent, like probably fist to double fist size rocks all across the ground. So you'd kind of crawl like half a meter and then have to get yourself over a few of those rocks, then keep crawling. But they were honest, right? They were just watching us the whole way.
Yeah, they knew that there was something there. I don't think that they registered that we were humans or hunters, or perhaps it was just this place doesn't get as much pressure as some of the other places I've been to. But they were not at any stage like scared. They didn't want to run. They definitely wanted to hang around. Yeah,
and so they kind of just kept feeding, and we started. I got a fair way in, probably crawled like maybe 20, 30 meters, and then they just kind of weren't moving too much. I was like, maybe it's better for us to back out of here and go. There was almost like a mini ridge that would have blocked us if we'd gone that whole way around. I was like, maybe we'd be better off to walk around that. And I was kind of just sat there for a bit, and I was trying to communicate with you if we should do that or not, or if one of us should go that way and one of us go this way. And then they ended up feeding. There was this one point where they fed completely behind the dead tree, like the dead stuff. And I was like, you just have to go. Like, this is your only chance. If you're going to get one, you may as well make it. So I got up off of the ground and pretty much made a run for it, like ran across a little bit in my socks. So it was nice and quiet. And then pretty much just beeline straight at this tree. And as I got reasonably close, they were definitely very aware. Like, they were doing their sneeze, and they're like, there's definitely something up here. How far behind me were you when we trekked down that little section?
I'd stayed a fair bit back. I was probably a good 50, 60 yards behind you, just because I had the camera and my bow. I don't know why I still have my bow.
Because there's so many goats, so there's opportunity. I think we actually talked about it. I was like, bring it for sure. Like, there's going to be a chance potentially for a second.
That's right. Yeah. So I was trying to like balance a bow and the camera and film you stalk, and I'm just like, oh, what the fuck am I on? So I was staying back a fair bit. I didn't want to blow sort of maybe the last chance of the trip. So yeah, about 50, 60 behind you, I think. I found a little tree to hide behind and just sort of stuck there for the most of it.
Yeah, and so we got into the stage where I was behind this rubble trying to get up closer, and there was no clean shots until I got into open view, really, of them. And to even get to the open view, I unfortunately had to cross through this path where it was literally like a clear gap where they could see everything that was going on through that gap. So I was like, they're not really moving. They're all sneezing and they're not really moving. Maybe if I just crawl nice and slowly, they'll kind of just chill out. And so I kind of just did that, just crawled in front of them, and they're looking through me, looking directly at me. And I just moved nice and slowly, and I made a bit of noise because there was sticks and shit all over the ground. But I don't know, once again, I think this is where people say goats are pretty dumb, because if that was a deer, they would have been gone by the time they saw us up on the hill, not let alone like when I'm right there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think these ones definitely were not highly pressured animals. They, just thought, oh yeah, there's something over there. That's probably fine.
What we forgot to mention is that the sheep actually had gone and mingled in with them. That's why I told the point about the sheep before. So they kind of ran in when we were at the top, and we were like, oh, maybe we're not going to get a shot here. And then they just separated. It was like sheep to the left, goats to the right. And eventually, by the time I got down closer, the sheep bailed out. They knew something was up, and so they ran off, but the goats just stayed. A bit bizarre.
I don't know why they stuck around as much as they did. I think there's something there that they were after, but
yeah, like maybe the food was good there or something, but it didn't seem like much. It seemed like shitty grass with prickles everywhere.
Yeah, not too sure. But they definitely then we saw them there twice, and they stuck around even though they might have felt a bit of pressure. So don't know what it was.
Yeah, so I got to there's one tree standing up and all the rubble there, and I had to get underneath a few branches and kind of duck and weave my way up. So I finally got there to the tree, and what I did is there was these feeding lots just kind of around there, like feeding troughs. They didn't have food in them, or at least not that I know of, because the goats weren't going to them. So maybe the sheep had kind of spread some seed around or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I range found the different feeding lots because that's what I could pretty much see without stepping out into the open. And then I stuck my head out, and I think I range found one of them, which was at 40. I went for the furthest one, which is probably about 60. And for some reason in my head, I was like, whatever happens here, you're taking a shot. I had made my mind up, and this once again goes into that last day pressure that I think I'd put on myself and like I talked about with you. I was like, whatever happens here, you're taking a shot. I'm like, 40 meters? That's perfect. Like, let's do it. Which is ridiculous based on the last episode we talked about where we weren't even taking 30-meter shots at times. We were like, no, let's get as close as possible. And so, sure enough, I loaded an arrow. I stepped out and I took a shot that I regretted ever since, which is kind of crazy. And it's something that we talked about a lot on the drive home. We talked about it a lot anyway, but took a shot and it hit the animal, but it was not a great shot. It was a gut shot. And it went through one goat and hit the other goat, which is probably what sucked the most because it got a billy and it got a pretty decent sized billy, but got him through, like it looked like his front left foot. It just took off like, I don't know, it was like it hit the Achilles of that front left foot or something. Not that I think they've got an Achilles.
I think. Yeah. Fairly leg.
Yeah. And so these two goats, like all the goats took off apart from these two. They're just right back. And I'm standing there and I was just like, I actually thought that she was going down. I was like, yeah, she's going down for sure. And she ran probably 20 meters. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on with this Billy. He's just limping off real weird. That's when I realized I actually had hit him. And yeah, so they kind of ran up probably like 20 meters and she bedded down. I'm like, sweet, she's gone. Like, she's going to go down for sure. And then he just kept limping off. And I'm like, oh, something has to happen here. Like, I'm going to have to go get him. Now that I've injured him, that's just ridiculous. So I put my old Rambo headband on and fucking took off again, hey?
Just sprinting after goats.
Probably not the best definitely not the best bow hunting method, that's for sure. But pretty much, so I just started trying to keep low and running up to the food trough to start with. And by this stage, he'd probably jumped off to maybe like 60 meters. And even though the nanny, she was down, I was like, she's still alive. I don't really know what to do here. I'm like, I just need to get this Billy down, really. And so I was running and I just copped like 100 prickles. So I had to take one of my socks off and then keep running. And I got up to I probably only got to like 30 meters from her before she hopped up, and she just ran straight in. There was the fence line that they were following up, and they were going around this fence line to get through the gate. And just on the inside of the gate, there was a wood pile which she went and stood in. Like, she went and collapsed in there. And so I ran up and I'm like, oh, this is too cruel. Like, I just need to finish her. So by this stage, the Billy's probably 30, 40 meters away from me. But I was like, I just need to finish her off. So I went through and I put a shot into her. She was laying down. Her head was hidden away from me. So she was laying down with her shoulder facing towards me. And I put it straight through her shoulder. went through the shoulder, straight through into gut, and it was just stuck in her. And she hopped up, and I was like, that's a lung shot for sure. She hopped up and ran and just fell down again on another patch. And I'm like, okay, she's done. Like, that's fine. And by this stage, I think you'd caught up. And we kind of had a quick talk. We were like, oh, what do I do?
Yeah, because I mean, we had 2 injured goats basically, and she was screaming and carrying on, and he was limping away. And I thought, well, look, you go and see if you can find him, and I'll do a quick blood trail and I'll take care of the nanny, sort of thing, because she was taking a little while to go down. So
I think we started both going after the Billy. We started trekking up after him for a little bit. We were trying to find a blood trail on him. That's what happened. And then she was still carrying on because I actually thought she was dead. I thought she was down. But she was a tough girl. She was a real tough girl. So that shot, I don't know. I actually never did a full assessment because I just felt so bad when I was butchering her up. But I never did a full assessment on her lungs because we know that we definitely got a lung shot because you went back and took a lung shot on her.
Yeah.
And she still did not die. Like, she was just going for it. Yeah,
that was pretty crazy. I felt pretty sick at that one, but
oh, dude, I'm so sorry for even putting you through that. That's rough.
Look, it's the messy side of it.
Yeah.
We don't always talk about it, so it's good to be able to discuss it. But yeah, you don't just get like a perfect broadside heart shot and they drop in 10 meters every time. Sometimes it's a bit of a job. So yeah, I mean, she took 3 arrows to get her to go down, and that was a shame, you know. And we had a bit of a discussion about that in terms of perhaps when we say we've got sharp broadheads, we don't have as sharp a broadheads as we think we do.
We kind of talked about maybe if that would have a big play on it or not, because the broadheads are still going through her. Like, I had complete passer on the first one. It was not a good shot. It was a full gut shot. The second shot, I actually thought for sure that was a lung shot. Like, maybe it would have been one lung. But
from memory, it didn't. I think it skipped across the top.
Yeah.
Hit the lung on the second one, but I didn't have a very good look.
No, and like I said, I didn't actually assess her when I opened her up, but I felt like I'd put it through early enough shoulder. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
She definitely wasn't going down, that's for sure.
Yeah, but, you know, at the end of the day, like, we managed to secure an animal, and that's what we were trying to do, and we might not have done it in the glamorous fashion or the sort of fashion that you want to take a video of and put on social media, but it got it done, and you got meat in the esky at the end of the day. So,
well, I guess that, like, the reason why, and I was very skeptical on whether we actually even talk about this, but I think it is a good educational point, really. Like, I've definitely learned a fuck ton of lessons off of this last hunt. Like, I think hunting is great. You learn a lot of lessons anyway.
You do.
But yeah, definitely, I think like each new hunt, there's definitely something new to learn. So back to the Billy, I was like, all right, well, I got to get after him then. And by this stage, he'd caught right up to the pack, and they were just hanging off probably 50 meters away. So by this stage, I'd also knocked off my other socks, so I was completely barefoot. And I just started running up after him and copped every bit of it as I was running. And I got up to where they were and tried to kind of run around. Like, it was interesting country. Like, there was trees down everywhere. There was, it was pretty thick bushland, and it was coming into the gorge section. So we pretty much had gone on top of a hill, and it had just dropped off over the other side where the goats were starting to head to. So I got to the top of the hill where they were. And by this stage, he'd kind of figured out how to properly run just using 3 legs. And so he'd adjusted, and he just started taking off, and they took off down the hill. And for ages, they knew that I'd run after them to start with, but they weren't that worried. They didn't have the urgency. And so I was running, and I got to one point, and there was a shot, but it would have been at like 30 meters. And I was like, nah, you got to get closer. Like, let's get in closer. You can definitely do right by this guy now that you've heard him. Like, actually just finish the job properly. So I kept running, and I think that was about when I tripped over some logs, and then they just fucking took off, and they headed off down the hill and got to this section where they stopped again. I'm like, okay, here's my chance. So I started running up after them again, and one of the nannies was just full on alert, and she gave out a little meh, and they all just took off again. So they went down this hill, And I saw them kind of cutting across. So I'm like, okay, I can run over the top of this hill a little bit more, like across the top of the hill, and cut down and be side on, get a good shot. The issue is that I ran across the top of the hill and along the way jumped over a fence line that I didn't know was there because it was knocked down at the top. But when I went back, the fence line went completely down the hill, and so they cut off at some point and went back in. And so I'd kind of run to the section, and there's no goats to be seen. And so I went back and tried to see them down the fence line, and there was nothing. I had my, I still had my binos on me, so I was glassing around trying to find them, and I just couldn't find or hear them. They went silent, like they were just gone.
Ghosts.
Yeah.
Keep going.
No, I was going to say at this point, I was actually lost. I was like, I don't know where I've gone because I ran up a hill, I ran down a hill, I ran side to side on this hill. Like, I'm not really sure. I think roughly I know where you are, but I'm not definite.
Yeah. Well, at this stage, like, I've gone back sort of because I've finished off that nanny and I'm trying to see if I can see any blood from that billy to see if he'd been hit. And I got to tell you, man, there was not a drop anywhere. Not where the shot was, not at the gate where he passed through, not anywhere along where you guys had walked. And I'd seen exactly where he'd run, and I just couldn't see a single thing.
That's why I think it was like a tendon. And I reckon it like took off. I don't know what's in the front there, but it was pretty much like it smacked the back of his leg.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but there was just zero blood anywhere.
It seemed like a clean cut through a tendon because there was no blood, but he was not walking on it. Like, it wasn't great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so by this stage we just gutted her up, and she was not in a good way. There was shit everywhere through her because it was a gut shot, unfortunately. And so we tried to clean her up as much as we could out in the field, and then by this stage it's probably like 10 o'clock maybe.
Yep, getting there.
And we were kind of like, let's just get her down to the river. We'll clean her off, and if there's any goats down there, then you can have a like a last chance sort of thing. And we got down to the river, and there was goats everywhere.
Yeah, they were, again, right next to the car, pretty much.
Yeah, like before we even hopped out. And so we hopped out, and I think pretty much we suited up, but I was just getting the nanny axe, so I was pretty much going to walk her with us and drop her in the water and then put her off in the tree somewhere.
Yeah.
And before that even happened, like, these goats popped out of the bushes right next to us pretty much.
There was some right next to us, and then I think we didn't even get her all the way to the river, sort of to wash her out, and then we spotted some across the river from us as well, about only 100 metres away or something. So sort of thought, well, if we were going to have a last attempt, this is probably the time to do it. They're right there in front of us. So
we chucked on. We actually tied her to my bull bar.
Yeah.
And we went after it, and I can't even remember what happened with that first bunch, because this was when you started stalking. Did they hear us or see us, or what happened?
Not sure if they heard us or saw us. I think the wind wasn't great.
It wasn't great, yeah.
Yeah. But you remember, we actually bumped those fallow on the way to them.
Yeah. That's right. So yeah, what happened is the ones that were close by the car, they took off up the hill, and so we left them, I think. Yeah. And then we're like, okay, let's go after those ones down the hill. Or down the river. So we went into those, and so at this stage I was in the dumps because of what had happened with the goat. I was really bummed on myself, to be honest, but at the same time I was like, okay, now I just need to be here for Lawrence. Like, I just want to get you a goat. Like, I'm really stoked to be there and be a support. And so I just had the camera. I was like, sick, let's get after it. And so we got to that point, and you'd spotted something up in the bushes, and you're like, hold up, and you'd slowed right down. Your whole body language had changed, and then that's when you'd seen that fallow, and I still didn't know it was a fallow, but then you're like, fallow, which is awesome. Yeah.
So she was only about 30 yards again, just up the hill behind a little scrub, and I thought they were going to feed down towards me. So I was trying to just get into position for that, but not too sure what happened. They, again, probably smelt me. I don't know how the wind was going, really. I don't think I had time to check it. Sort of wasn't focused on them, was focused on the goats down the river. But yeah, they eventually, I think there's 4 of them in there, sort of behind this scrub, and they just started to feed up towards the hill. No, like, urgency. I don't think I blew them out, but they just didn't really give me an opportunity.
And then the wind swelled, and that's when they did actually take off.
Yeah, and then the wind swelled. They took off up the hill, and then I hear a bleat from about 50 metres behind them, and I can see the goats have done the same thing, basically. They're off the hill as well. So I think maybe we were a little bit too gung ho and said, "Oh, there they are, let's go get them," and didn't think the fact that there's probably not great wind right now to do it.
Well, I think because of that location, it was kind of right in the bend of the river, so it would pretty much bounce off of any wall that was close enough to it and create that little swirl. So I think that's what kind of stuffed us a bit as well.
Yeah. And then we said it was a northeasterly in the morning, and I think it was meant to change about 11.
Yeah.
I think this pretty much right on. It had changed back the way we didn't want it to go.
So we pretty much said let's just trek down the river a little bit, and what we'll do is we'll jump up on top and come back because that's where we'd previously seen the goats the day before. We're like, oh, maybe we might get one last chance, and so we pretty much walked only 50 meters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then probably 30 goats stood up on the hill and just they're like, man, took off. Right? It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and they were there the whole time. I think
Yeah.
In the 5 minutes it had taken us, they all rolled in.
We were just both so, I don't know, just dumbfounded by it because we're like, how the fuck did we not see 30 goats?
Where did they come from? How did they not hear them even? But
I'm pretty sure they were bedded, and we were walking through that pretty longish grass stuff that just, it makes noise, and as soon as we were walking something, obviously we just set them off.
Yeah, and so then here we are, like, stuck in the middle of the river, all those massive river stones everywhere. This is the time we're trying to get back up the hill, right, to chase them?
Well, this is when so there was a few that ran off, and then there was just one nanny that stuck around. And so you're like, all right, I'm going to make a shot. I'm going to go for it.
That's it. Yes. And so this is my chance to Rambo up a hill after a bunch of goats. Moving very quickly at this stage, and probably didn't take as much time as I should have to take a shot, and I think that chalked me up for the 4th clean miss of the trip. I don't know what's going on there. Might have to, but yeah.
But you had, like, in your defense, you had just changed your sight over. You were now using different arrows, and you actually went for a shot above 20. You're like, hey, they're like 25, 30.
Yeah, she was just over 25, I think. And so I had sort of worked out, I think, how the arrow was going to drop. And I thought, if I just hold that a little bit high, I should be okay. Because I've got a 70-pound bow, and they're not the heaviest arrows in the world. They're pretty heavy, but the drop's not terrible between 20, 25. So
I mean, and the difference between my arrows to yours was we figured out like 100 grains. So there's going to be going to be a little bit of difference in that. So compared to what you used to as well, I guess. Yeah,
look, in the end, I think that the guess was fine. Like when I saw the arrow fly, I thought that the height was good. It just was a left-right, so I think it went off to the right. Yeah. And on reflection, it was because sort of I was standing sideways on a hill, and while I felt like my bow was straight, when I think about it, my bubble was definitely just completely off to the right because I'm not standing up straight. So that's probably where we went wrong.
That was going to be my next question. Is like, do you have a bubble in your sight?
Yes. I do. I just forget that I do,
What's your shot process? Like when you go through that, do you look at your bubble and you look at your pin, then you look at the animal, or what's your process when you're trying to aim?
Well, see, I've been struggling a little bit with target panic. Well, I think it's target panic. I'm not sure really, but struggling to sort of line everything up and let the shot happen naturally, and I'm forcing it a little bit. So that's why I changed to the single pin. Was just to let go of all the distraction and just really, really focus on what I'm trying to hit. And so lately I've been not worried about the bubble. I'm not worried so much about the pin and where it's floating, and I'm not worried about anything else. I'm just trying to make it feel right. Mm-hmm. And the shot felt good, but I didn't even look at the bubble. I didn't even look at the pin, you know what I mean? I just sort of put it where I wanted and squeezed it off. And that's probably where the downfall of that is.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, I think I actually saw a massive difference when I was just shooting on flat ground from when I was lining my bubble up compared to when I wasn't. That was like a bit of a game changer for me. I'm like, oh, there's a bubble here. I guess I should use it. Little did I know, it actually wasn't even fully lined in properly. So when I went and saw Jake Gasparowski, he then measured it up and made sure that it was completely like dialed in. So every time that the bubble was at in the middle, that it was actually straight, because previously it was just off a little bit, but I still noticed a big difference. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then there's sort of, depending on complexity of the site that you have, there's second axis and third axis and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it can get a bit tricky when you're taking odd shots at angles up and down hills and yeah, things like that.
Listen to us. We sound like the biggest kooks.
Yeah.
How funny.
Yeah.
And so we pretty much just trekked up onto the hill and we're like, all right, let's just get around. Like these goats went off to the right. We're like, if we can do a big loop around to the left, we're going to be able to get them. Like let's just kind of trek through. And if you remember back to the first nanny that I injured, wow, I'm just a bloody shitty shot murderer. This is ridiculous. So that first nanny that we murdered, that I injured, that we walked across from one side of the tabletop to the other side of the tabletop to the road, that's back where we are now. And so we started walking across and we're like, well, stuff it. Let's just get across the road and we'll be able to walk back up a bit faster and get around them. And as we started trekking through, I just watched. I was kind of looking ahead a fair bit as we were going. Like we're sneaking, but it's not very sneaky style stuff. It was literally cornflakes underneath us. It was just loud as hell. And we were walking across, and I just saw this tree, like just kind of, but nothing else around it moved. I'm like, it's windy, but everything else should be moving. If like everything else should be moving with the wind, it shouldn't just be the one. So I kind of stopped and I just looked at it again. I was waiting for it. And all of a sudden, it just like sprung back up. And what had happened is a goat had jumped on its hind legs to grab it and pulled it down with it. And then it was eating away. And as it let go of the bush has shot back up. So I quickly glassed it. And I'm like, you're on, Lawrence. Here we go. And that was a huge billy, right?
Yeah, I got to say, it was not just a goat. Hey, that was biggest billy.
Cow goat.
Yeah, man. He was like, he's every bit of high 30 inches sort of thing.
Yeah.
He was looking really good. And by the time we had glassed him, he was only 35, 40 yards away.
I think to the tree was 35, and he was on the other side of the tree. And I was like, do it right, man. Take your shoes off. Let's go. And so you got ready real quick. You were like bang straight into it.
Yeah.
And you made a good stalk. You probably got, like an extra 10 yards on him. So at this stage, probably about 25.
Yep, and I was ready to go. I was feeling good. I just sort of peeled out behind a tree and was ready to draw back, and I felt this tickle on the back of my neck and just thought, oh, fuck.
And every hunter hates.
Yeah. Like clockwork, they were out. They blew straight out, and this is very different to those other goats. They were clued on.
Yeah, they were out straight away, hey?
Yeah, I guess that's like the saying, right? It's like you can fool their eyes and ears, but not their nose.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, they smelt us. They knew what was up, and I watched my prize billy
run away,
sprint the other direction.
And so once again, we're like, oh, well, they might not run too far. Let's maybe try to get around them. And so you went back and you put your shoes on, and little did we know, we were standing literally right underneath a tree stand.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? Like we were right in front of it. It was 50 centimeters from my face. I did not notice it because it was so focused on those goats. But yeah, someone had set up a tree stand. Like they fully put in pegs and put a stand up there and everything. So it was good to know for next time.
Yeah, definitely. Which makes me actually think: would have you sat in a tree stand for one of those days?
Or for a day, no.
Yeah.
For a couple of hours in the morning, because you got to realize that when you put a tree stand somewhere, you put it somewhere for a specific reason, for a specific animal, for a specific need. Mm-hmm. So if someone who's put it there because they know that fallow used that tree to bed at 10 o'clock or something like that, and that's when they go and set up. I don't think they sit there like all day.
No, unless it's like the whitetail, and then it's just on like a public land trail, like game trail that just set up on. So I think something like that was definitely like it was definitely like a bedding area around it. And so it's hard to judge because it's like you could get in there really early and then have to wait 6 hours for goats to rock up because they're coming from the hills, or it could be that the deer are there. Yeah, so I don't know.
I feel like I don't know anyone who would put up a tree stand for goats.
Yeah, I guess.
I feel like it's not needed, but. And there was a lot of fallow around there. So
yeah, I feel like it was more for the fallow.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that this place gets pretty crazy during the rut, so I wonder if that was sort of why it was there.
Yeah, definitely.
I would have loved to put a trail cam up there, and then seeing what's kicking around there at what times and when to go and sit in the stand. That would have been cool. Definitely something to think about next time.
Yeah, definitely. Even just having it there for a day, I think is pretty beneficial. If you can keep away from it, you can just kind of see what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be really cool.
And so we pretty much trekked around and got to the road, and we started trekking down the road, and we just pretty much, I don't know, I think we were almost like, okay, I think it might be a bit late now.
Yeah, I think I had gotten in that stage of the day and we'd blown enough stalks for that morning that I think we were done. You could just sort of feel it, like we were done.
Yeah.
That's it. And we still had your goat, like, to process and everything hanging back on the car.
Yeah.
So that was a big, but I didn't want to just leave her out for too long. So
we started trekking back down the road, and I think we bumped like 2 more sets of deer then.
We did, yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know, it was very thick country. Like, we were on the clear path, obviously walking along this dirt road, and it was thick country. Like, those fallow were just hiding in the bushes, literally 20 meters away from us. It wasn't until they stormed off that I would not have seen them. If they'd stay still, we would have walked straight past them.
Yeah, we said that, right? They stopped and we looked at the tree, and I'm like, you know what, there could be a deer in there right fucking now, and I still wouldn't be able to see it.
Yeah.
You just couldn't. It was too thick.
Yeah. And then it happened again up the road when we were getting closer. I think by this stage we were fully off it. We're like, okay, it's home time. Like, we got to go pack up and get moving. And so we got back. I'd actually put my goat into a tree. So we'd gone back to the car because there was another stack of goats, I think, close by. And so I moved the goat off of the bull bar into a tree. And when we got back and we got her out of the tree, we went to put her in the river, and the river was actually like just mucky. And we're like, oh, it's probably not the best thing to do for it. So we took it back up to the hut, and I washed her right down and then started processing. Yep.
Started that, yeah, the long haul of packing everything up and breaking them down. And it was lucky that that the property manager was able to put those other 2 goats into the freezer for us, into the
fridge cold room. Yeah, that helped a heap.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what we would have done if we didn't have that access, right? Like, our eskies were being used for food that we were still eating from day 1 through to day 3. Yeah. So we kind of would have been a bit screwed if we didn't have that option.
No, I think you can just bag them up, and you just keep them in the bottom of the esky right closest to the ice, and they can last quite a few days. Like, because it doesn't have to be frozen; it just has to be cool.
Cool. I guess it was cold enough weather, right? We probably could have just hung them in nearby trees, actually. Now I think about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can go full caveman, I guess, and you could smoke them and make jerky right then and there and preserve it somehow. Salt rub, I guess.
May as well. We had a lot of salt rub, which leads me to the point about your sick little cape that you got.
Yeah, so the guy I managed to get was a very fat, very healthy little Billy, and he had like a really, really nice coat, really nice fur. So I've kept it, and I'm going to try and tan it, but I haven't got a clue how to do it.
I was about to say, so what's the process from here?
Yeah, well, my understanding is that I trimmed off all the fat and all the meat that I could.
Which you did an incredibly good job of, right? Like, that took a fair while.
That took, a good hour. There's still a bit on there, but... and we salted him straight away after I got that off. And that actually drew out a fair bit of liquid. And then I resalted it, sort of just doubled the amount on there 24 hours later. And now it's all sort of wrapped up and put in the freezer. And I gather it can last there for quite a while. But I would like to get it going once I make a plan. But so from my understanding is that I've got to get a tanning kit, which is just like some chemicals.
Yeah.
Basically that you soak them in to dry it out and to sort of preserve the skin and help you actually remove any of the that's still on there. So, yeah, if anyone's ever had any experience tanning a goat skin and would love to give me a hand or give me some advice or something, point me in the right direction, that'd be fantastic because I'd like to keep it. I think it's a good little...
sick. Hi, what's your Instagram again?
It's a really good question. I think it's Lawrence Arnold _ I'm not super active on Instagram, but yeah, if anyone does know,
I think that's probably the place that people are most active on that listen to the podcast. At least that's where they're most active with me. But that might be kind of the best place. Like a listener, I'm sure they're usually happy to kind of give a little. Yeah, it's just Lawrence Arnold _ They're usually pretty happy to give a little helping hand. So yeah, guys, if you're listening and you do know how to tan a hide, please reach out to Lawrence. That'd be sick.
Yep, hit me up. It'd be awesome. Thank you.
Rad. Well, dude, I think that's a pretty good space to end it. I've kind of, and once again, I did say this, I think, on the last podcast about like the animal hierarchy, and it's funny, I've been closer and closer to deer each time, yet there's still that thing about me that I wouldn't take a shot unless I'm kind of at like 20, 30 meters, yet with these coats, like it just got away from me. And I think realistically, actually, let's finish up with maybe what some of your biggest lessons were.
Okay. Well, I mean, for me, I think my lessons are probably pretty different to yours because we learned different things off each other, I think. But for me, realizing that when you get your chance, you've got to really take it and don't be afraid to get your meters in and actually go after it. And because I think a lot of the trouble I've had is sitting back and watching and waiting. And everyone says bow hunting's a game of patience, but I think perhaps there is such a thing as too much. And I think I'm erring on that side. So for me, it's definitely been, just get in there, have a go. And it's nice to be in a place where there's such a, game-rich environment that if you do blow your one chance, it's not just your one chance, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to try and take that away from this trip and try and actually sort of not be afraid to just get stuck in and see what happens.
Yeah, I think mine's almost the opposite, is to have a little bit more patience because I was probably being a bit too aggressive with them. But definitely around that last day, like, don't put any expectations on it. I think expectations are something that we do in regular life as well, and it's where we can be let down. And I think if I can not have any expectations going into any hunts, which I've pretty much not had this whole time, it's almost like something to do with, I think, being the paid property. I don't know, like maybe that put a bit of extra pressure on it or something. But yeah, it's like any expectations I have, I think I need to let them up before I even get to the hunt.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think maybe the pressure's off now, like you've got your go.
Yeah, definitely.
And from now, you're just looking to upgrade. You're looking to do something better than last time, and you don't have to just get anything at any cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't have to be Rambo in the woods again. Oh,
ridiculous. Little bit's good.
Yeah. No, I think this is really cool, and I think like realistically, why we wanted to kind of talk about this is one, because it was an eventful day too, but also that I think there was a lot of lessons learnt across the whole weekend, which I think were awesome. It's kind of realistically why I started the podcast, is just so I could share those events and those bits and pieces with people. It's almost like learn from other people's mistakes, learn from my mistakes, and learn from people's wins as well, like the things that are good and important and the things that we kind of get out of this hunt, and hopefully others can share from that.
Speaking of what you get out of the hunt, man, I've got to ask, have you eaten any of it yet?
Dude, so much of it already. It is delicious. Yeah, I made this goat curry. Yeah. And it's absolutely incredible. I went to go and buy all the ingredients from scratch. We've got like this little Indian like supermarket close by us. So I went to it and I was like, hey, could you just give me like a bit of a rundown on what you put on a goat curry? And she said, I'm actually vegetarian, but I've got this powder you can just use. And so I went around and checked it out, and it was actually a really good quality one. So I just used it, and you just add coconut milk and some water. So I made that up, and it was ridiculously hot. So I've got a pregnant wife at the moment, which is not super stoked on how spicy it was. So I just took a photo of all the ingredients, and so I went and got all the ingredients fresh and then made it up from scratch there. So I'll do a video up of it because it's really delicious. Like, I was blown away with how good the goat actually is. It's kind of like, I don't know, the red that I've got is delicious. Like the red meat that I've got from James Doomstis is absolutely incredible, but hands down, the goat is better. Like, if I had to choose between the two to eat for the rest of the life, I'd definitely eat goat.
Yeah, it's awesome, hey. I think especially we got some pretty healthy animals and sort of young nannies and young billies and stuff, so we got good eaters, which helps. But, man, yeah, I mean, I got the backstrap out, and my missus just did like a medium rare sort of sear on it and cut it up in a salad, and it was, amazing.
Yeah, okay, because I haven't tried it just as meat yet. I've only put it in curry, so, yeah.
Honestly, man, if you got some backstrap, do it. It's you did them into like tomahawk.
No, I took the back end of the backstrap, and so I've got like two little strips as backstrap, and then I've got the tomahawk for the top half.
Yeah, sear it up, man. Do it like a steak. It's really good. It's really tender. I enjoyed it.
I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that for sure.
Yeah.
Alrighty, cool, man. Thanks heaps for joining me for part 2.
Of course, anytime.
We'll have to do part 2 of the hunt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm super stoked to go out. It was it's good to find a good hunting buddy.
Absolutely, man. Had heaps of fun. It was awesome.
Yeah, indeed, dude. All right, thanks heaps, listeners. That's it, guys. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Becoming a Bow Hunter. You guys can follow along with the journey at becomingabowhunter.podcast on Instagram and Facebook. You can also head across to the YouTube channel, which is Becoming a Bow Hunter. So, guys, follow along. We've got a whole heap of different recipe videos up there, as well as different snippets from along the way, along the journey so far. If you guys do enjoy the show, please pass it around. If you got something out of this show, then I'm sure another bow hunter, another friend of yours would get a hell of a lot out of it as well. So please share the love, share the podcast, and thank you so much for tuning in.